And we're back. What up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Oh Dear podcast. This is your host, Odi Herrera, and I like to say, finally, it's been a minute since I've been here. You know, I got through a little heavy-handed talking about all the DC stuff the last two episodes. I wanted to do a thing with DC since I didn't get to do it last year where I'm like, damn, the universe is ending. I didn't talk about the news and everything like that, and I'm like, it feels good to go back movie by movie, reminiscing on what happened. How did I feel before? How do I feel now? I'm like, good luck, James Gunn. You have a huge job ahead of you, so hopefully we can get it good next year. So, what's it been like? We had like two snowstorms finally in Jersey, and I can't believe we got up to January in the middle of the month to do it. It wasn't even like freezing before. It was just like, rain, some light wind, but we actually got the snow, and it's been terrible these past 2 days, heating up the cars, especially cleaning up the streets again. But yeah, that's just me going back into my January vibes. And I hate coming back from vacation and knowing when I gotta go back to work the next day, everything is gonna lose sight. Like, damn, these past 2 weeks happened so fast. It's gone just like that. And I kind of miss going on vacation at this point. I want to go by spring break just in case, but hopefully with the luck I'm going to have this year, let's be grateful if I can actually get through what I need to accomplish, because now that we're in 2024 and we're going to go back to school, work, hustling, doing my thing back over again, I'm like, I got to figure out some new way to deal with this thing, because I want to graduate at this point, but I'm like, yeah, the past caught up with me, and I feel like I'm going to start paying for my mistakes, literally, at this point. So I'm like, okay, so how am I going to resolve this issue by doing this, this, and this? I'm trying to figure out ways I can actually deal with that whole payment issue. It's not going to be that big of a deal, but I'm like, damn, we're going to have to prepare this year. Hopefully it's the last one, just in case. And we don't got to deal with this anymore, so I can get my career going. And that's going to be one of my biggest problems this year. Another, I feel like, is not a big issue, but it's more what am I going to do outside of college? And like, now this is like the pre-state where I got to figure out what other jobs have I applied for, who else can I find, what other connections have I used to help me get through these jobs, but I still don't know how to figure that one out. I'm doing this for me because I feel like I've wanted to do the YouTube channel for a while. I had one and then deleted it and then rebooted it with this one. And also, I want to keep going with the stuff I'm going for, because I'm writing my own scripts, I'm doing my own thing here. Everything is fine at work, but I feel like at this point in my life, I'm like past 21. I'm about to hit 22, like the Taylor Swift song. And I feel like this is the next chapter in my life. What am I going to do? What's next? And I feel like that's going to be the revolving question with me moving forward. What's next? Because Act 1, you got that over with in December. Act 2, it starts now. 22 is going to be the rest of your life up until you hit Act 3. Or should I say the midpoint, if I want to call it that. I don't know. Still don't know when I'm going to use that midpoint device yet. But yeah, that's going to be another thing I'm going to be dealing about. What's the journey now that I'm going into 2024 in new eyes? Don't know. Hopefully, God's by my side. I have a lot of hope for the things I want to do. I want to keep everything I want on the channel active, but I still want to influence myself to do other projects in the meantime. One, hustling. Still, I know I'm not going to figure out a lot of ways to get money. I'm still trying to learn that online crypto, whatever finance thing is, because I got a friend who told me about this, and I'm like, okay, cool for you, but I want to know if this is actually going to work, because I want to be sure that I'm actually getting the money. And not gonna lie, he's doing good too. I see him as an actual partner at some point. Don't know whether I'm gonna talk to him about some ideas or not, but I'm like, I like what you're doing. At least you're doing something after high school, because not gonna lie, that's another thing I gotta get out of 2023. Ah, man. Old connections who I feel like aren't that big of an influence in my life, because yes, I know them and I have baggage from high school, but I want to keep going. I feel like there's more to life than just this. Like, we're still at the bottom, but there's nothing you can do to have me go over to the top. Because I can go out and have fun. That's one thing. But then, if that's the only thing we're gonna keep going on and off about, and I don't see any change within the group or any, let's say, advances between personalities, I feel like, yeah, I'm gonna detract from that, and I want to keep going with the things I'm working on because, if I'm being honest, no one talks about anything like, oh, I'm doing this, this, and this. Oh, what's up with you? Well, I just got blank, 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 and nothing. No influence, just casual. Let's hang out and party talk. Yeah, detracting that from my experiences here. And another, I feel like I'm at that point where I gotta get back to the gym again, and I kind of been slugging out for the first half of January, and I actually kind of started this week. I gotta say, no, I gotta go back on the journey I was going before because I need to fit a suit or a costume every year now at this point, and I'm like, I can't lose the workout progress again. I gotta keep going, and plus, I'm not gonna look better for the summer body as soon as June hits. If I don't get good by that point, I'm gonna be like, damn, another year failed again. When you had it perfectly for the last 2 years and you gave up. Hopefully that gets resolved. And not gonna lie, I'm back on the old THC. It's been a weird thing with that because I didn't find it like a too much of a habit at first, but I'm like, it's calm, relaxing. Even helps me do some of my work because I'm like, let me think of a script. Let me think of some ideas. Part 3. Okay, I got that one. Part 4 is going to be as good as it is. No, wait. Make it a Christmas one. Oh my god, I just thought of the title. Silent Nightwalker. Perfect! But, no. I don't know. It gets me in the thought process, actually gets me think about what I'm writing, some new ideas I have in mind. Instead of, like, writing stuff, I would rather just, puff one out, think of something, and just vibe. Think about, okay, what can I do to better this? What do I need to think about to improve my life? Should I be treating dad right? Yes, I should. Should I be talking shit to Willie? No, I'm not. I wish that motherfucker would. Stuff like that, Casual inside talk, but, Still trying to work through that whole thing. I'm still adapting to it, hopefully, because, not gonna lie, the ones I just got were kind of weak. And I'm like, I feel like it's my weight. I gotta go fix that issue in the gym because I know I used to be a heavy set guy, but I'm like, nah, I don't feel any effects from the things I should be liking. I gotta lose some weight. And that's me, basically my life at this point. But yeah, for the channel, there's some things I want to do for the channel because like I mentioned before, I didn't get to do Nightwalker Part 3 and Part 4. I still have like old footage I used for Part 4 and Part 3, but I feel like I'm going to have to reshoot it because now I'm going to have to go back to scheduling and figure out how to keep everything in canon because everything has got to stay in canon for Part 3. Part 4 could be its own thing because I got to have the same face and hair I had when I previously continued off because it's going to look weird when I have the same long hair in the last one, but when you see me in Part 3, I'm going to have shorter hair. I don't like that continuity effect because if I'm not going to shoot all three at the same time, I feel like there's no point in actually keeping in continuity if it doesn't matter to me. But I'm going to figure out a way to reshoot Part 3 with my boy Dell. Part 4, that one, I'm going to have to think about when exactly I can shoot this because it was a Christmas vibe. I got the Christmas backgrounds and plus it's going to look a bit advising to the people watching it because it's going to be like, oh, it takes place during Christmas. There's all these Christmassy shots, so it must take place on Christmas. Assumption. But now that we're going into the summer, I'm like, okay, we lost a bit in the environment. Some of the snowy stuff I can't use. And now I'm going to have to think about recasting or casting again because I don't know if it's going to be just me, but I feel like if you doing somebody a favor, you should help them. But then again, it's like, that was a vibe before. That was a good idea at the start, but I might not want to do it now. I know some people are like that, and I'm going to say, yeah, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to keep it a trilogy at this point. And if I want to come back to Silent Nightwalker and do a redo on that, or at least think of something else, I'll come back to that story. And plus, I still got more to say after that, too. Like, I already thought of a prequel to the whole thing, like my basically my own origin story. And I kind of came up with it inspired by a friend. And what that event made me feel, and I was like, let me see what I can do with this. And I wrote a whole story behind it, so I'm like, okay, that would have came about. around maybe Valentine's Day, but I don't think that's coming out at this point. Uh, Another thing I got in the pipeline, hopefully, and our setup for the news, where I'm going to talk about some movie topics and some news that just happened recently. This thing I got right now is that I'm in the middle of writing my own Scream fan film, where it's still up in the air, where we're still dealing with Spyglass, Melissa Barrera, whether Scream 7 is or isn't gonna happen. I'm like, damn, that sucks. But now it's gonna feel like, damn, when I watch Scream, it's not gonna have the same effect after everything that just happened, all this news. And I'm like, damn, this sucks. And then I came up with, I'm like, man, if they're gonna have to reboot this whole thing, why not make it a real life true Scream movie? Like, Scream 6 mentioned a line where Gale said something like, I try to do the movie rights for this, but everybody likes true crime stories nowadays. I'm like, that should have been what Scream 6 was about. Instead of dealing with the old killers and movies, have the killer be inspired by those killings. And my story would be a fan of the Scream franchise is like, Scream 7 is canceled. Allegedly canceled. I don't even know if it's canceled yet, but allegedly canceled. So this guy goes on a journey to make his own Scream 7 or his own ending, and actually makes it a true story about someone dressing up as Ghostface based off the movies a la Wes Craven's New Nightmare, where the Scream movies were all movies in this universe, and this guy is inspired by the stories he saw and is actually causing everything that happened in the Scream movies to happen in real life. Almost like the reverse meta, like the movies are meta advising people about scary movies, what they don't know that are actually don't apply to people who are actually crazy and homicide. Homicide, is that how you call it? I don't think it's homicide. I think it's a different word, but you know what I mean. Somebody crazy and diabolical to actually kill people without ease, and how would these movies influence them? Something like that. I'm still working out the kinks of it, and I'm still looking for people who I might cast as my victims, because I'm gonna be the killer, and the killer is the protagonist, who is also the antagonist over the movie he wants to make. Like, I'm my own narcissist doing this. Like, that's crazy. I don't know. I'm still trying to work it out. Hopefully that one ends up coming up, because if I do this and Scream 7 doesn't happen, I'm going to be really upset. But I'm like, at least I made my own. Almost like that episode of Fish Hooks when they made that Jocktopus 3 movie or whatever that one was called. So here's a segue leading into my topics for today. First one, I should be going back to this Cole Scream situation, which I was going to talk about on the channel for like movie news, but I'm like, let's see where the story goes, because I feel like it's just going to lead back to nothing. And no, it doesn't seem like it at this point, because Melissa Barrera got fired over her own words about Palestine, which, not going to lie, when I first heard that, I was like, okay, it better not be something hateful, because you're a good person. I be following you on Instagram. I don't see you doing some bad shit. And then when I see the tweets, I'm like, all these are basically saying genocide bad and support help for Palestine. And I'm like, y'all fired her over that? That's crazy to me, because I'm like, yeah, there are some people we would fire or have done other worse things, a la Ezra Miller, a la Amber Heard, a la Rachel Zegler. But I'm like, okay, I get that. I get they say some dumb shit, but I'm like, she's one of the good ones, if I want to be nice. But I'm like, okay, so now that you fired her, how's this whole story gonna go? Then Jenna Ortega backed out of it after support of what just happened. Like, you really fired her and you thought she was gonna come back? No. So our two main leads left, and there was no any confirmation about who else was gonna be returning. The director was still like, calm down, stop yelling, it's not my decision, it's the studio's. And then finding out a couple weeks ago that the director even left himself, which, okay, I'm like, at this point, it doesn't look like there's a movie in the works. And not gonna lie, people hating on him for no reason is like crazy, because he's the director. He's the guy the studio chooses to pick to do their movie. And they really threatened the fuck out of this dude, threatening him, his own children. I was like, wow. Scream fans are crazy. They're as bad as the Star Wars fans. And it's kind of weird, because I thought about this whole situation and I'm like, they did kind of mention this in Scream 5, where they're like, fandom can be toxic. And toxic fandom affects the movies we have today. And I'm like, wow, huh. Scream actually bringing back the rules of reality and promising that this is not fiction, huh? That's crazy to me. Not gonna lie. Should they even cancel it at this point? I'm like, if I'm thinking with all the facts that they have right now, because there hasn't been any news lately, cancel it, because if everybody's gonna quit on it, the fans know what you guys did, and at this point, I feel like we just gave up. If you want to do another Scream movie, take it to another studio, or at least hold off on this and continue on elsewhere, because Spyglass really did a number in this one in a whole year, when this was the best rated scary movie, and this is the return for Scream, and I'm like, wow, you really messed it up for everybody else. Hopefully we get to see an update for Scream 7. If not, we had a good duology. I don't even know how they were going to top 6, because I feel like the story ended there with the sisters, and I'm like, what else can you tell? At the time I was like, they'll think of something. Hopefully. So yeah, that ends Scream 7. On to The Last of Us Season 2, where, okay, finally the writer strikes has ended, and now that we're going to get a bit of more updates with our movie news, they finally announced some of the cast joining in for The Last of Us Season 2, like Caitlin Dever as Abby, Young Mazino as Jesse, and Isabella Merced as Dina. What do I think about these new cast members? One, the dude who's going to be Jesse, I love him. He was the funniest part of Beef on Netflix. And I got to say, okay, I can see you being a little bit cocky as Jesse. I like that. Isabella Merced as Dina. That's a new one, because I could have sworn in season 1 of The Last of Us, when Joel and Ellie got to the cabin, there was a girl looking at Ellie, and she said, "Get the fuck out of my face." And it was like, it's rude to call people that. And she's like, she was just staring at me. I'm like, that's Dina. That's got to be Dina, because in The Last of Us 2, there's a slight little reference that Ellie tells Dina that, I remember the first time I met you, you were just staring at me from across the corner, and I just told you to fuck off. So I'm like, okay, they're going to bring in that returning actress as Dina. And she does look like Dina from the game, so I'm like, okay, they're going to be doing this. But no recast, so I'm like, oh, that's going to be interesting. And for the, how do you say, the elephant in the room, or in this case, the golf club in the room, Caitlin Dever is Abby. This is something I gotta say, if she has social media, she better put that shit on private the moment the trailer comes out, because this is gonna be something I feel like fans of the show are gonna be like, okay, I don't know who this is, but I feel like there's not going to be too much of a villain. Why am I going to hate you? Oh, shit. You're going to be like Joffrey times 2. Holy fuck. What? I got to say, if they're going to bring her into this, I got to say, have her bulk up a bit, because I remember that she was one of the runner-ups to play to play Ellie for season 1 instead of Bella Ramsey. I'm like, you look like Ellie, but you look like more The Last of Us Part 2 Ellie. In case they want to recast her and cast you as older Ellie, we'll see that happening. But as Abby, I gotta be like, something about it is gonna feel weird, knowing Abby in the games is much more, how do you say, muscular, and I feel like she's gonna have to pull some sort of like Wonder Woman-ish style bulking. Not too much, but I feel like she's gonna have to look a bit more menacing than Ellie, because if you play the games, she's brutal. Even against Ellie, she was brutal, and she took her hits too, but nothing was taking her down. And I feel like if they're gonna do that and believe it for the show, let her at least gain a couple pounds, get some muscular arms to at least get the look. Because if it's just gonna be her the way she is, it's gonna be like, how is she threatening? How does she oppose any fear or any angst to our lead? So I'm like, okay. Hopefully they can get it right, because season 1 was amazing, and I know it's going to be a whole new direction going into season 2, especially because there are some people who don't know the games or don't want to get spoiled by the games. And not going to lie, I feel like, because when I watch it with the family, it's going to be some bullshit when that scene happens. So hopefully The Last of Us Season 2 ends up going good. I know it's coming out in 2025 and we'll be there to see it. Next up is a bit of news that's... We've all expected this to happen at some point. We're like, is it going to be? Is it confirmed? Is it not confirmed? Hopefully it is, because I want this version to be the version I want. And it happened. Echo released last week. My review on that is coming in soon. And it's finally confirmed that all the Marvel Netflix shows are canon to the MCU. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Defenders, and The Punisher all have dates and timelines on the Disney Plus app and in the MCU time order, which I gotta say, finally, because I remember back when the whole Netflix stuff was announced and they said, oh, they're part of the MCU. They're part of the MCU, so get ready to see one of the Defenders and all that join the Avengers at some point. So I'm like, okay, well, that's going to happen as soon as they bring Spider-Man in. We got Daredevil, so like that he could show up in a Spider-Man movie. And years went by, and after the Defenders, which ended on a season, and all other Netflix shows started getting canceled one by one, I said, oh, so this is not going to happen. We're not going to see these heroes anymore, these characters. Unresolved endings in between seasons, so hopefully this gets confirmed for a season revival, hopefully, but no. All the Netflix shows got canceled one by one, and now that when they casted Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio to come back as their characters for Hawkeye and for Spider-Man No Way Home, it was believed that, are the Netflix shows canon? Are they not? Because they noticed little slight differences in between characters, like, okay, it's played by the same actor, but they didn't know if it was exactly the same character, like what they did with Evan Peters as Quicksilver in WandaVision, where we know him as Quicksilver from the Fox X-Men movies, but when they brought him in, he was Quicksilver, but kind of not. And same thing with this. We're like, okay, are these the Netflix versions, or are these MCU versions or rebooted versions of these characters? And up until Matt Murdock showing up in She-Hulk, it was like, okay, so this is kind of the same Matt Murdock, and they even played the Daredevil theme in the background when he says his name. And he's like, okay, all this history, is it not? And then later when Echo finally confirmed it, I was like, huh. So we have Jessica Jones out there on the streets, Luke Cage still roaming around in Harlem, the immortal Iron Fist out there with Nightwing and the Daughters of the Dragon, and Frank Castle hopefully killing people somewhere, we don't know. And maybe Elektra's out there somewhere, but I don't know about that one. Hopefully they could at least find a way or find a format to bring all these characters together again, because Daredevil Born Again I know is bringing back the Punisher, but I don't feel like that show should be impacted on the things like, okay, it's a Daredevil show, but it's not going to be like that cameo of the week where we have all the street heroes come in one by one in a final episode or a final team up episode. I don't see that happening, but if they can actually make them work, hopefully it's a good Defenders crossover again, and at least bring in Spider-Man to at least try to make a cameo, because he's on the street, he's a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and he deserves it at this point because he needs friends out there. Next up, again, another surprise. I'm like, okay, I'm not surprised, but it took you really, Blumhouse, this long to announce it? We're getting a sequel finally announcing for Five Nights at Freddy's 2, where they mentioned in quote, they're in the process right now of nailing it down the story, and they want to get it going as soon as is possible, says Josh Hutcherson. I gotta say, Five Nights at Freddy's was a good attempt at doing the games onto the movies. I would have wanted a good rated R version of the movie, but I'm like, okay, we're gonna stick with PG-13. Okay, less blood, no violence. I want my lore on the big screen, but not gonna lie, it was a good movie. It just, despite the little nitpicks and stuff like that and change of story, I'm like, okay, yeah, I didn't like this, and this, but then again, Scott Cawthon wrote the story, so hopefully he has something new if they're going to be changing a couple things. Like, why wouldn't he make Mike and William connected to each other, or father and son? That's interesting enough, and also we're still thinking he's part of the Emily family, and also the post-credit scene showing Balloon Boy escaping. I don't even know if that's going to feed into anything, and also the little message at the very end, like the mini games, they mention "come find me." So is that going to mean that Garrett is out there? Or could that be the puppet? Something like that. Vanity, I don't even know, because they're mentioning Vanity. I don't know why, because that's like further in the timeline. But Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Can't wait to see it. Hopefully they actually take some time with the script, look at the first one, see what they could improve on, and also the thing that I keep hearing that I'm not sure if it is that they don't want to do the second game. Like, they don't want to do the second game as a prequel. Like, the first movie's the movie, and the second one is a prequel to the first movie. They're not doing that. They said they might go actually in regular order, like Five Nights at Freddy's 1 to Five Nights at Freddy's 3. So I'm like, okay, if that's what you're going to do, hopefully you find a way to introduce why William Afton wanted to kill these kids, show him in the young Spring Bonnie suit, actually have him walk around Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that, even the toy animatronics, because they nailed the designs in the first movie, and I gotta say, if they want to actually make some merch or sell some toys, actually do life-size versions of the toy animatronics, because that would sell, I'm not gonna lie. And it would be a good comeback, because it's gonna be like, oh, the grand reopening, actually mentioning it like in the second game. And that's it on Five Nights at Freddy's. Another franchise that's coming back to the big screen after a long time. Star Wars. Starting with The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is titled where I thought, okay, I know we're going to get a Mandalorian at some point. Season 3 was a little but hopefully they can fix it with Season 4. And Season 4 news has been quiet lately, so I'm like, so we're not getting a Season 4, we're not getting a Mandalorian anything for a while, so what's going on? And they announced the Mandalorian movie, which I gotta say, finally, it's about time we finally saw a Star Wars movie back on the big screen. And with it being The Mandalorian, again, I'm gonna be like, yeah. Now, anybody can watch this. It's gonna be amazing. They're gonna see not all, but I feel like there's gonna be nothing to surprise us again, because in The Mandalorian, when they had their few moments, like the whole Luke reveal or the Grogu moment, even Ahsoka or Bo-Katan, when they showed up, it was like, wow, because we're watching it on a streaming service. But in a movie theater collectively, we're not going to get the same feeling as we did with the original releases of the Star Wars movies, because I remember first night of The Force Awakens, it was so celebratory and nice. I cried, people screamed, people clapped, everything like that. It was like, damn, Star Wars is back on the big screen. And then Rogue One comes out. It's a new story, and hopefully some of the same familiar stuff has happened. And that Darth Vader scene at the end, everybody was cheering, everybody clapped, even young CGI Leia. But now, after Episode 7 and Solo, it's been a whole thing where the whole Star Wars community just died down with those movies. And when I went to go watch The Rise of Skywalker, it was like I watched it by myself with my dad in a theater. Wow, the Force was not strong in everybody that night. So yeah, we're gonna get Star Wars back on the big screen, and I heard that there's also gonna be some development on the Rey movie. Maybe, maybe not. I don't care what people say. Yeah, The Force Awakens and all that made it so that Finn was gonna be the Jedi, but then Rey was. I'm like, let them write something, because it's not her fault. People like blaming Daisy Ridley for that shit, but I'm like, she had no involvement in all this. She just played a character. Fans are just toxic sometimes, and it's like, damn. There's some things I don't like in fandom, but I'm like, I'm not that hateful. Like, shit. They're just people who getting jobs. And Star Wars. Yeah. Hopefully they come back with a good movie. And since it's The Mandalorian, I don't expect there to be too much hype just yet, because I know we got Skeleton Crew and Ahsoka Season 2 on the way. And what's that other Sith show they said? The Acolyte. That one. Yeah, they got that one coming out too, so I'm like, okay, don't get hyped yet. We'll see what these shows got to show us, and hopefully the Mandalorian movie does something different, or at least tie together all what's going on with Thrawn, or in case they want to do that. And another, speaking of streaming shows, one is not coming back on Disney Plus, and that is She-Hulk. So, I'm not one of the ones who are like, She-Hulk was the worst thing to happen to Marvel ever. I can't believe this. This is the worst way you can actually include this type of superhero. Was like, yes, I understand, but I don't get the hate that bad. I'm like, yeah, there are some dumb moments. Yes, this ain't the She-Hulk I remember, but I'm like, at least it's trying to do something, and you guys overblew it by making it about women, toxic masculinity, and stuff like that. I'm like, this is not what I know the character for, and I feel like if you're going to do a comedy, make it make sense, not just say it's a comedy just to be a comedy, because it's the MCU. And what the reasoning for this one is because right here they say it right here that Tatiana Maslany, who played She-Hulk, was asked by someone at the Twitch game show live that should we hope for a season 2 of She-Hulk, and she said, "I don't think so. I think we blew our budget," and Disney was like, "No thanks." So I feel like, wow, Disney blaming Disney over a show that they made and wonder why is the show bad. Hmm. So I gotta say, I don't even know if she is coming back. Maybe She-Hulk the character could return, and hopefully we get to see a return to her and the Hulk stuff. Because not gonna lie, I like Hulk, but the way they've been doing him lately is like they're making him so weak. Where the original versions of the Hulk up until Avengers Endgame made more sense and or why we like the character. We don't like the Smart Hulk quite as much, and that only works in a few cases because Bruce and the Hulk's personalities are supposed to mix up at some point. But I want the Rage monster back. I want Savage Hulk. I want the Incredible Hulk that they promised, but hopefully we get to worry about another Scar joke. Hopefully some dumb fourth wall breakings. I wonder what this Avengers lineup is going to be because if you're thinking about all the heroes that they got to add at this point, I'm like, who's left? Uh, that's another topic for. That's a discussion for another time. I gotta think about this. Hold up. So we got Falcon, who's Cap. Doctor Strange, Spider Man, maybe. Shuri, Black Panther, Hulk, Ant Man, Wasp. She Hulk counts. I guess I'm gonna count that one. Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, Spectrum. Is there any other heroes out there? I don't. Thor, yeah, Thor. I forgot about him. And I think that's it. Besides, that's like a lower lineup. Oh no, we got on Winter Soldier. I think. Who else am I thinking of? Winter Soldier's there. Wanda, she's gone. America Chavez, Miss. I already said Miss Marvel. Kay Bishop, Ironheart, and yeah, I think that's it. That's basically the lineup. And wow, this lineup is not as intense as I thought it was going to be listing the names out. But I'm like, yeah, they're going to have to deal this whole Avengers thing or whatever the plan is now with that. Kang is now moving forward and Jonathan Majors is fired and all that. I got to say, Marvel, hopefully you get this right because you got one movie coming out this year and hopefully that one does well. And here up to our last two topics for right now. Fast X Part 2, instead of being called Fast and Furious 11, is going back to basics. And what I mean by that is that surprisingly they said that Fast 11 it will reportedly go back to basics and will have a budget of $200 million or less and will apparently be a throwback to the first film. And remember, this franchise is the kind that took a car into space, had guns shot at them with bullet holes in their clothes, and they don't get hit. Magnet cars. How can I say this? Driving down a dam. Driving fucking into fire using Nas and making an X out of the fire. Yeah, that's got to be some crazy shit. And if they are saying they're going back to basics and going back with a lower budget, I don't know if that's going to work per se because you got to remember the last movie ended with Dom just holding his son in a bridge that's about to blow up. And Giselle is there alive in the Arctic with Letty and Cypher. So hopefully this cliffhanger is going to lead somewhere. And The Rock's back. I forgot about that one too. So yeah, because they say this one is the last one, or I don't even know if they're going to go back to Fast 12 because they said there was a part 1, a part 2, and a part 3. I don't even know if that's going to work the way they think it is because they're at this point, it's weird to say that this movie did not hit $1 billion due to the surprising fact that it was taken out of theaters after 3 weeks, and then it was on streaming. I was like, what the fuck? How is that? Why is it on streaming? It just came out. I remember seeing it like a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, wow, it made exactly just as much as Fast 9, And if they would have kept it in theaters for like a month or two, it would have made that billion easy. And who knows what crazy shit we would have seen in the next one. So I'm like, okay, hopefully they end off high. I don't expect too much at this point because I'm like, yeah, it got too dumb and unrealistic for me. Fast 9 messed it up. This was a nice enough attempt. Yes, it brought back stuff like racing, some of the unrealistic stuff from Fast 5. And Jason Momoa, no matter how eccentric he was as the villain, I'm like, I liked him. He had a good time doing this. Hopefully this ends off high. And who knows? We might actually say, damn, this is a good one for real, for real. They ended it off like this. And finally they just ended the franchise perfectly. And in this case, the final news for today, Until Dawn is getting a movie adaptation, which, if you remember the game from 2014, Until Dawn, where it's about this group of kids going up to this cabin after this guy's sisters were murdered or disappeared a year ago. And when they go back to the cabin, some mysterious things are going up around. And also, there's a lot of decision-based choices in this movie or game where it's one of those almost like the Telltale's Walking Dead where you got to choose your own decisions and say, okay, here's my decision to do this, and by saying this person is going to respond in that way. I don't know how that's going to work for the movie because I'm like, okay, that's a decision-based game, and now you're actually writing a script. Hopefully everything translates as well as you think it is, because there are some decisions that affect the characters in such a way, even the consequences of these characters, because I remember not playing the game. I don't think I played it myself because I was an Xbox person at the time. But I remember watching Dashie, Berleezy, PewDiePie play these games, and all they made different choices. Dashie killed Chris, which I'm like, I hated Chris anyways. I'm like, damn, Dashie, you let him die, and it wasn't your fault. Everybody hated on him. Berleezy killed everybody in his gameplay. I was like, wow, that's got to be one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen him make. But yeah, if they're going to be doing the film adaptation, I got to say, okay, we'll see. Hopefully it's good. And if you want to make it easy money on this one for perfect casting, use the same cast because they look like the characters. They are the characters if you think about it. All models, all characters and voices are done by them. So I'm like, if you want to bring them back and do this, it'll be a good adaptation. And hopefully you actually make some decision-based things that it could work in live action, but it can't because there's some where I'm like, in a real movie, would you really do this? And it's not going to work out the way it is. But some of the traps, some of the little sequences in the tunnels, I feel like that's going to work. Even the Wendigos, I feel like they got to actually fix them and actually have them move like creatures like the way they did in the game because they were demons, but I gotta say, we've seen a lot in the movies, and hopefully for a game translation, they can get these exactly like the clickers in The Last of Us because they look good and accurate, and hopefully they try to do the same thing with the Wendigos in this. Anything else I want to mention? I think that's it. And I feel like that's the end of our show. I wanted to come back and at least give a couple updates for myself. And also, not even just that, but also talk about some stuff I would never talk about in a video because I'm mostly there for the reactions, the news, even some reviews a couple times. But for here, I'm like, okay, if anything's not worth talking about video-wise, like I would do a video on it or an analysis. But I'm like, it's too small of a topic. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. But I'm like, I could actually use this part of the podcast to actually talk about these things and actually give my own input and my own explanation. So like that, this is more like a video in itself, but at least this episode is like a way to say, I want to hear his thoughts on these things, but I don't know if he's going to talk about it or he's going to mention it, but he's doing it right here. Nice. So I guess that ends it all for here. Thank you guys for listening. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. All my social medias are down in the link tree above in the channel description. And as always, I'm there, and I'll see you guys next time.